Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. We're going to start our service together with our opening song, the Gathering Song number 389, Gathered Here. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. Gather here in the mystery of the hour, gather here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Hershatter, and I signed the membership book at UUCD in 2010. I was raised in a culturally Jewish household and chose Unitarian Universalism because it speaks to my most deeply held values and perspectives on what makes us fully human. This makes me a proud card-carrying Junitarian. I serve on the Sunday Services Committee and as a supporting musical accompanist when needed. So, welcome to this virtual service of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. We are so glad that each one of you is able to join us this morning. And together in community, we can ensure that social distancing does not mean social disengagement. Our weekly services are more than just a gathering of our physical bodies. It's the forming of a sacred time that we create together. Whether you are well versed in the technology of teleconferencing, or this is your first venture, we welcome you. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, whatever your theological stance, whatever your heritage, whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. If you are new to UUCD or are reconnecting with us this morning, please introduce yourself in the chat as you feel comfortable so that we can welcome you warmly. We're good at that. You can learn more about us on our website and our Facebook page. And we encourage you to share our Facebook page and reach out to others who may be isolated at this time and could benefit from the spiritual connection with our loving community. This morning, we are delighted to welcome Reverend Alex Klingenberg. Reverend Alex is an entrepreneurial UU minister, a writer, and a spiritual director. Her creative arts ministry focuses on archetype, myth, and language as a way to connect to community and to develop meaningful spiritual practices. Reverend Alex lives in Medford, Mass. With her husband, her son, 2 black cats, and a ridiculous dog named Cricket. She recently published a collection of poetry called Secrets and Stars. Young adults of UUCD with Sequoia Low this afternoon. Am I right? Yes, every Sunday at 12 noon in the UUCD Zoom room. Sequoia's email is on the screen if you have any questions. It's for young adults to 18 to 25, but everyone is welcome. Now, a little about closed captioning. You will find, is it on the screen? Yes, no? Okay, sorry. Okay, today at 3 o'clock, this is a very important announcement. It's our very special holiday concert featuring some debuts by some of the children in our congregation, as well as some of the adults. It's at 3. The Zoom link will be sent out, Sherry promises us, promptly at 11:30 following the service, so be looking for that. And again, welcome to the UU Congregation of Danbury, where we welcome all in a spirit of compassion, inquiry, and service. And if you want to know about the closed captioning, it's on your screen. Okay, so that's something new. At the bottom of the screen, click on CC Live Transcript. At the bottom of the box that comes up, click Enable Auto Transcription. Welcome.
Good morning. We meet this morning at the threshold of winter. A winter that is wintering a little more intensely than we are used to. Plans are reduced, travel is ill-advised, and that bright spark of connection and joy has many limitations being placed on it. We gather today near the longest night of the year and give thanks for this technology that allows us to share space safely, even as we grieve all those things that we are giving up. Today, we ground ourselves in the beauty of darkness and in the hope, the assurance even, that the light will return. Come, let us worship together this morning. Rick is going to do our chalice lighting.
Please join me in reading with me the chalice lighting affirmation. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another,
and celebrate
life.
Good morning. Oh, it is good to be together this morning. If there are children and youth who are in the room but not near the screen, I encourage you to come over now. We will have pictures to go with today's story. While you're on your way over, let me remind you that during coffee hour or fellowship time, all children and youth are invited to come to our special RE Zoom room after the service for some time together to chat, share joys and sorrows, and try a spiritual practice. The link was sent to your adults this morning. At 11:30 in the same Zoom room, we will have a winter solstice crafting and storytelling gathering. I hope to see many of you there. And finally, the Reverend Heather has asked me to remind all of you that our Christmas Eve service in a couple of weeks will include setting up creches or nativity scenes, as we won't be having a pageant. If you have a creche or nativity scene at home, you can use that. But if you don't, you're invited to make a do-it-yourself creche from whatever you have on hand. You can use toys or chess set pieces or paper dolls or something you print out from the internet. Do whatever you want. You might also want to consider the creative choices you'll make about the telling of your story by the scene you create. For example, you might want to ask how gender, race, disability, and ability show up in your scene. Now would be a good time to start gathering those items together because we do celebrate Christmas Eve this week. And we will send out on Wednesday a list of the full cast of characters that you might want to have on hand, but do keep that in mind that you will want a full cast of characters in addition to your stable. Let's now say together our children's affirmation. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. This morning's story is called Celebrating Darkness. Let's wake up our imaginations with the words that have been used to wake up imaginations for generations. Once upon a time. Is your imagination stirring? Is it ready to awaken? Once upon a time, there lived people who loved light. As soon as the sun rose every morning, they were up to welcome it, singing songs of celebration for the light. And when the sun went down each evening, they sang other songs, sad songs, songs of missing the light of the sun. They did not love the darkness. Once darkness fell every night, they would hurry to bed, since they could only bear the darkness when they were asleep. Even then, total darkness was frightening to them. They were scared of the dark, and so they always kept a fire burning in every room. The people's dearest wish was that the sun would not set in the evening, that darkness would never fall. But every day the sun set, and they sang their sad songs, and they endured the fearful, sad, strange darkness until they could greet the sun again the next day. Now, in this land were born two remarkable children. They were twins. Though they were not identical twins, they looked almost identical, and people would have been unable to tell them apart had it not been for one thing. One of the children, when he came into a room, the room dimmed. And one of the children, when they came into the room lit up. There was no doubt that these were magical children. As the children grew, so too grew the community's understanding of their magical powers. When warmth was needed, they called on the child who could bring light. For with light came warmth, a warmth so powerful that it could help heal people who were hurt. So strong were this child's healing powers that the people suspected that the child could bring plants and animals who had died back to life. But the people were afraid to ask, and the child did not offer. When calm and quiet were needed, the people called on the child who could bring darkness. When Z was a very small child, Z could help her family go to sleep more quickly, thus saving them from fear of the darkness. When animals were frightened, Z could bring them peace and make them still. It seemed the still calmness Z could create was powerful enough to settle even the most raging storms. If the people had not been so afraid of the dark, they might have realized that Z too had the power to heal. They might have called on Z to bring healing coolness and calming stillness to those who were hurt. But since they were afraid, they didn't think his powers could heal. The people's love for the light and fear of the darkness only grew with time, perhaps more strongly with the twins always before them to remind them. And so one day they decided to ask a favor of the child who could bring light. They asked them to try using their magic to hold the sun in the sky and stop the night from coming. The child was reluctant, but after many, many months of being asked, they finally decided to try, just to get the people to leave them alone. One day, just as the sun was at its highest point, the child went out onto the top of the highest hill in the land, threw their arms up toward the sky, and asked the sun to stop, to stay right there at the top of the sky forever. They weren't immediately sure that anything had happened. The sun usually moves so slowly. But before very long, it became clear that something had happened. The sun had stopped in the sky. The people were overjoyed. There was a big celebration. They threw confetti and sang all of their songs celebrating the sun. It felt as if their love for the child who could bring light grew and grew. Everyone was happy and content, at least at first. But soon they began to get tired. Although they had always slept with a fire to ward off the darkness, sleeping in the full light of the sun was another thing altogether. They tossed and turned and woke up constantly. Some of them remembered that the child who could bring darkness could help with sleep, and they asked Hare for Hare's help. But Hare's power of bringing sleep seemed to have disappeared along with the darkness. After about a month, the exhausted, frustrated people began to see that this constant sunlight was a problem. Though they still loved the light, they began to wish that the sun would once again move in the sky. Each person at first thought they were the only one who wanted this. And given the people's love of the light and fear of the darkness, everyone was afraid at first to say anything about this growing longing for nighttime. But slowly, softly, as they began to confide in each other, they discovered that everyone felt this way, and they finally decided that something must be done. They went back to the child who they had asked to hold the sun in its place. It was the child's magic that had stopped it, and they figured that the child's magic could make it move again. So the child went back up onto the top of the highest hill, threw their arms up into the sky, and asked the sun to move. Nothing happened. The child tried again, and a third time, but the sun stayed still. Sadly, the child turned to the people and told them there was nothing they could do. There was a long moment of growing panic before the child's twin stepped forward. "Let me try," Z said softly. Everyone thought about it for a moment and then decided this was a good idea. So Z took his sibling's place on the top of the highest hill, threw his arms up to the sky, and asked the sun to move. The sun began moving at once, rushing toward the western horizon. Within 10 minutes, it had set, and within 15, it was a full, dark night. The people were caught off guard. They had all come out to the hill to see if the plan would work. They had no fires lit. They hadn't needed them in weeks. I think we're supposed to be on the picture of darkness right now, but I'm not sure if we got stuck. There we go. They had nothing with them to light their way. They had never been outside at night before, and they were terrified. At first, they tried rushing home to get away from the darkness, but they soon discovered that rushing when you can't see where you're going is a bad idea. They slowed down, but still peered at the ground, trying to get home as soon as they could. But then one of them looked up. "Oh," she exclaimed, "look." Everyone looked up, and then they all saw the stars for the first time. They had never been outside at night before and had no idea of the incredible beauty of a sky full of stars. They all stopped hurrying toward their homes and stood and stared in wonder. And then they realized how very tired they were. And so slowly now, and with more reverence, they started home again. They all slept for a very long time. The people rested and were glad and appreciated the darkness for the first time in their lives. Eventually, the sun rose again. As it did, the people got out of their beds and sang their songs to celebrate the coming of the light. But at the end of the day, as the sun began to sink toward the horizon, they did not feel like singing their sad songs. Instead, one of the musicians began singing a new song, a slow, quiet song of thanksgiving for the night. And soon the others joined in. It became their new sunset song. And the children grew into adults, both of them very much beloved by the people. Looking at them, still best of friends as well as siblings, the people remembered that light and darkness are best in balance. Amidst the heartache, uncertainty, collective perseverance, and deep pain of this present moment in our country, we also experience all our own individual joys and sorrows. Now is the time for sharing in the chat those personal milestones that are lifting up your spirit or weighing it down.
Rick, please unmute.
Sorry. It is now time for a congregational offering. If you are here for the first time, feel free to pass the virtual plate. Your presence here is your gift to us. Members, please express your generosity by clicking the link that is posted in the chat window to make a donation or pledge. Even though we're not in our sacred space on the ridge, we are creating our holy place together, and our operating expenses remain the same. You may also mail a check to UUCD at 24 Clapboard Ridge Road, Danbury. Thank you for doing your part to support and sustain this community that we love. Please join me in the congregational response. In the spirit of compassion and service, we dedicate these, our offerings.
The first time that I remember falling completely in love with darkness was during a meteor shower. It was my very first year at camp, which I'd never been to before. And this just so happened to be a Unitarian Universalist church camp in northern Michigan. The sky was perfectly clear, and we brought our blankets up to the very top of a grassy hill and lay them out under a huge sky full of stars. We were up way later than we were scheduled to be up, and all of the counselors just didn't want us to miss this experience. And so at first, a bunch of 12-year-olds were up there being very loud and giggly, and then the meteors started to go across the sky and everyone fell silent. And I remember exactly how hard the ground felt and how cold the air was and how transfixed everyone was by this incredible sight. It was one of my holiest of moments. It was probably my holiest of hours. Some of my most spiritual moments have happened in the dark, singing around a campfire or watching the aurora borealis from a butte in North Dakota, walking down a moonlit road outside of Portland, and in the night feedings of early motherhood. So I've developed a bit of a spirituality and a theology around my love of darkness. But historically speaking, I'm still not a huge fan of winter. So I grew up in the Midwest. I am in no way a newbie to serious winters, even though I have also lived a fair amount of my adult life in California. For me, growing up, they were always just part of life, good or ill. Winter just was. It was something to be endured. And then I moved to San Francisco after college. And for the first time in my life, I experienced a complete lack of those Midwestern or Eastern seasons. And I loved it. I loved it so much. It was almost always sweatshirt weather there, right? It felt basically like fall any time of the year. There's basically no difference between summer and winter there. It's always some variety of spring or fall. And I love fall boots, and I love turtlenecks and jackets and rain. I love flowers, and I love sunny, foggy days, and I did not miss the winter at all. Not once did I ever think to myself, gosh, I wish I were snowed in the freezing cold, icy air. So when my husband got into graduate school in Chicago, I was pretty bummed because back to my home state we went. And when I got there, I realized that I was several years older, but that I had very little to show for it. The California years all blended together, right? There was no sense of time or growth. There was really no structure around the year, especially as someone who grew up with those seasons. There was no demarcation of time. So when I got back to the Midwest, I started to realize that for me, even though I didn't like winter very much, there was a real benefit to having the year broken down into these more manageable chunks. So the seasons began to lend themselves into a sort of natural rhythm again for me. The summer is sort of for play and for exuberance and getting outside. And the fall was always when I did the best work. Like I really planned new programs. I was really dedicated to getting things done. And then the winter is for rest, right? Stillness and going within. And the spring is for renewal and reconnection. So all those years spent in California, without summer and without winter, I never really let myself play. And I never really let myself rest. So having all of this knowledge and having come to this understanding, it didn't really make Chicago winters any easier for me to handle. I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but it is a poorly constructed city for winter. The public transportation there is all elevated above ground, where the wind can catch you just so. And what they've done in Chicago, when you're trying to take the L, is they've put up these plastic containers that are about as big as 4 people standing in a row, and they put little heaters just in this one area. And because there's just this one heater and an entire platform of frigid cold air, all of the pigeons go in there and just hang out inside. So you have the choice of huddling outside or being surrounded by hundreds of pigeons. So yeah, it's a bit of a tough season in Chicago. It's also a bit of a tough season here. But I think the hardest part about winter for me is the isolation. Even in a normal year, even in a non-pandemic year, connecting with people gets harder and harder as the winter wears on, right? The effort to reach out or to unshovel your car or to wait with the freezing pigeons starts to feel like more than we really want to manage. So a few years ago, my friend, who's also a minister, Rachel, invited me over for what she called a winter solstice gathering. And this was at a co-op that we had both been living in. And she was like, this is to celebrate the longest night of the year. We're going to celebrate it instead of dreading it. And I was like, okay, I'm game. Let's give this a shot. Let's try celebrating instead of avidly dreading the coming of winter. So about 10 of us gathered into a common room in the co-op. Remember gatherings? Those were fun. And we drank decaf coffee and ate chocolate cake. So she had all these like dark, rich foods for us to eat. And we chatted under blankets and read to each other from children's books and Little House on the Prairie and all sorts of little things that reminded us of our own childhoods. And then at midnight, we moved to the library, where Rachel had blackened all of the doors and all of the windows. And the room was lit with just one dying candle, a candle she had used all year for all of her sun ceremonies. And this was the last one of the year. So it was almost completely gone, just this tiny amount of wax at the very bottom. We watched it flicker until it became nothing. And then we sat in complete darkness for moments. And we sat there in this warm and close and dark silence. And then she began to sing. And those who knew the song joined her. At the closing of the song, she lit a new candle and encouraged everyone to remain quiet and still for as long as they wanted. Some people stayed for just a few moments and then went back to the other living room to chat, but I stayed for a long time, just staring at the candle and enjoying that space of peace and renewal that we had created there. Since that day, I have often wished that I had the words for the feeling that I had that night. And I don't know if you are all familiar with this term, but it turns out there is one, hygge. This is very popular now. When I was talking about this word, I had never heard of such a word, but hygge is a hard to translate Danish word, which roughly means coziness and well-being. But it is so much more than that. It is an entire way of living and loving that encourages open-hearted appreciation of the everyday. Louisa Thompson Britz, who is a half Danish, half English writer, describes hygge as the art of building sanctuary and community, of living closeness and paying attention to what makes us feel open-hearted and alive, to create well-being, connection, and warmth, a feeling of belonging to the moment and to each other, celebrating the everyday. Hygge, she goes on to describe, is a kind of enchantment, a way of stirring the senses, the heart, and the imagination, of acknowledging the sacred and the secular, a way of giving something ordinary a special context, a spirit and warmth. Hygge is about being, not having. And that is exactly what we had created in that cold solstice night, right? Instead of ignoring or avoiding the difficult elements of winter, we embraced them and gave them some meaning. Now, that being said, meaning making is incredibly difficult right now. I don't know if you're all experiencing this, but I'm really, really sick of the pandemic. I'm done with it. I don't want to do it anymore. And I go in waves with this, right? I go in waves with it. I get into a rhythm and I feel relatively at home and I can do this. And then I fall out of rhythm with it and I just want to scream and see something new and not be fatigued with this lack of novelty, right? The lack of being able to travel and hug my family. So how do we do this? How do we do this thing, this meaning-making hygge enchantment thing when we're not allowed to touch each other or go and spend time in each other's homes? How are we going to do this and do this well? I think it feels a little bit like we are at the longest night of the pandemic, right? Like we know the light's coming back. It's coming back. We see it. It's there. They made vaccines and some people are getting it. And right now we're waiting We're in such a profound state of waiting. And I would like to encourage you to go ahead and be frustrated about that and have some grief when you feel it, because when those ebbs and flow come, I don't know about you, but it's very tempting to be like, I'm just going to distract myself from how hard this is, right? I'm going to get online, I'm going to scroll endlessly on Facebook, which they now call doom scrolling, apparently. And what I want to invite us into instead is an acceptance of what we are currently going through, right? Which is this longest night. It is going to be a long and challenging winter. But after this sacred pause that we're going to describe it as, there will be rebirth, right? We need to acknowledge how incredibly hard this year has been and will likely to be all through January and February. But by spring, we will be able to emerge, I do think so, from our winter dens and slowly begin this process of coming back together. So today I'm going to leave you with just a couple of ideas, rituals, for how to make this winter season more meaningful, have a little bit more hygge involved in it. Feel free to take what you like and leave the rest, like pick one or two. Don't need to do all of them. They're not calling to you. And I will go ahead and put this list in the chat and send it around. So if you don't have paper and pen handy, don't panic. All right. Number one, tend to some indoor plants. Now, I'm terrible at plants. I'm really bad at plants. I am. But what I've decided is that for this year, I don't have to be good at it. I just have to try. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get a plant. And then if it dies, I'm going to go and get another plant. And I'm not going to be mad at myself because pandemic. This is my plan for plants. We're going to try because this is something that's learnable. People have done this for years. We can figure it out. Number two, dive into something you've been wanting to learn. This winter is the perfect time to explore something mysterious. I recommend tarot and archetypes and even diving into what your sort of astral chart looks like. Even if these things are not things you would normally look into, this is a great winter to just get connected to these visual archetypes, right? Now, I'm going to sell archetypes anytime I do anything because they're my favorite thing. But I really do think that you will get something out of it. We're in hermit mode right now, right? We are going within. We're in crone mode. We are going within. So there is so much wisdom in these ancient systems. You can just read Carl Jung if you don't feel like going the tarot route. He's really into archetypes too. Okay. Begin to deepen or continue a journaling practice. Now, I want to say this very clearly because some people do not like journaling. You don't have to journal anything interesting. It doesn't have to be good. No one is going to read it. You can just write lists in there of things you want to do one day, or you can write terrible poetry like you would have when you were 12. You can do whatever you want in this journal, but this is a really good time to start a practice of daily jotting down of your thoughts and checking in with yourself. Sometimes I will literally write at the top of the page, how are you today? And then just write out how I'm doing. Okay. Number 4, use a fire ceremony to release what you would like to let go of before the new year. There are many ways to do this. The simplest and easiest way is to take a candle and a tiny bowl of water, write down what you would like to release on a small piece of paper. Don't write it on an 11 by 12 or you will have a smoke hazard, something small, and light it on fire and then dip it into the water and let it dissolve. You can also take toothpicks and write on those and light those on fire. That's very satisfying because it's like a tiny log. This process is a transformative one. There's alchemy in fire. So it's going to take what you've got going on inside and put it back into the universe to be absorbed back into the earth who can handle it. Okay. 5, create time and space to tell stories and to sing. If you have a family that you're living with, that's a great set of humans to do this with. If you don't, this is a great set of humans to do this with. You can get on Zoom. You can do more of a open mic night. So one person can come on and share, and then the next person can come on and share. As we see, we can do readings and music together, but this is a little bit more casual. And it's one of those things that I think a lot of us love to do in the winter. And I just want to say, you can still do it, even if it is over Zoom. All right, number 6 is choose a day to completely leave off all artificial lights. So I'm doing this with my family tomorrow for the winter solstice. At some designated time, I think 2 p.m., I'm just going to say no more artificial lights. And anytime you need to do anything, you have to light a candle, and then we're going to go to bed really early. This is one of my favorite wintertime rituals. It calls back a little bit to what Rachel had us all do, but it also is a reminder of what it must have felt like for all of our ancestors, for all of those many, many years who didn't have anything to light their way but the fire that they could create themselves. And the last one is to develop a meditation or a prayer practice. And I am going to go ahead and lead us in a little bit of a meditation practice here in just a second so that we can take just a couple of minutes and really let this season begin for us. Tomorrow is the beginning of winter. We're here. We are about to walk through the gateway. So today I invite you to consider how you're going to create these sacred pauses throughout the winter season. Amid the noise and the chaos, the potential chaos of this holiday season, I would invite you to take time to grieve. Give yourself space to feel all of the feelings that we push off the rest of the year. Go within and really, really own them. To heed the inner voice within us, we have to let our souls catch up to our bodies, right? So I want you to take a breath. If it feels comfortable, put your feet on the ground so you can feel the earth. And close your eyes. You are muted, so no one can hear you when you sigh. So what I'd like you to do is take a deep breath in and audibly let it out. Imagine now that you are walking out of your home at night. The laughter and the lights, the expectations of the holiday season are fading into the distance. And you are wandering into the darkness alone. Maybe you can see your breath. Maybe the ground is crunching lightly under your feet, a thin layer of frost. You look up now and see a vast blanket of stars. They go on forever. And for a moment you stand transfixed. you realize that you are standing on a huge floating ball suspended in a sea of darkness. You can zoom out and see that you are standing on the dark side of the earth, tethered to its surface by gravity alone. The mystery of life is so deeply connected to this slight tilt of our planet. Our very existence now and has always been connected to how far away our little marble is from the sun. And so as we begin our slow orbit back toward the sun, I advise you to pause in the darkness, unafraid. As you come back to the space where we're all together, I invite you to reopen your eyes. And we are going to do just a little bit of a responsive reading. And so the way this is going to work is slightly cacophonous, but stay in this calm space and it should be fine. So I am going to say a line, and then after the line, you will all repeat after me. The light is reborn. Okay, so go ahead and unmute yourselves. In the greatest darkness,
Light
Is reborn.
out of winter,
Light
is reborn.
from our deepest fears,
Light is reborn.
when we most despair,
Light is reborn.
when the earth lies in waste,
Light is reborn.
when the leaves are gone.
Light is reborn.
Light is returning.
Light is reborn.
Summer will be here once more.
Light is reborn.
Life will continue.
Light is reborn.
May it be so. Thank you, friends.
May it be so.
And if you could all mute again, that would be wonderful.
Oh,
And we are going to go directly into our meditation hymn, which is Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
We are reaching the end of our service for today. Now is the time for the extinguishing of our candles. And please join me in the shared declaration shown on the order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.
We'll sing our closing song, Dark of Winter, number 55. Dark of winter, soft and still, your quiet calm surrounds me. Let my thoughts go where they will, ease my mind profoundly, and then my soul will sing a song, a blessed song of love eternal, gentle darkness, soft and still, bring your quiet to me. Darkness, soothe my weary eyes, that I may see more clearly. When my heart with sorrow cries, comfort and caress me. And then my soul may hear a voice, a still small voice of love eternal. Darkness, when my fears arise, let your peace flow through me.
Thank you, friends, as our time together ends this morning and in the days before you come together again. May your actions match your words. May your thoughts be filled with love, and may we truly make a difference in a troubled world. Blessed be, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday.